Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our occasional series of podcasts and interviews. This is Deborah Owen for Convergence in the Commons and ultimately Einstein's Secret. And I am very happy today to have Jeremy Wagner from Texas. He is an 8th grade science and engineering teacher, and he is the 2013 Teacher of the Year from the state of Texas. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us today. I was wondering if you could tell our audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today as a teacher.
Well, I guess my whole journey kind of started, back as a youngin. I saw my mom kind of start teaching, and she went back to school at an older age and kind of inspired me there. And I had a lot of inspiration from a high school teacher as well that kind of dragged me through the mud and taught me, played that male role model that I didn't have. And,
Okay.
that basically helped me get to where that was the idea I was going to have to save the world. I've always wanted to save the world since I was a kid, and I decided I was going to do it as a teacher. And so I started teaching right out of college in 2007. I'm just starting my 7th year teaching right now.
Wow.
The whole Teacher of the Year bit started for me as the Campus Teacher of the Year back in the 2011-2012 school year, and kind of went up from campus to district, district to region, region to state, and it's been a crazy ride ever since.
Yeah, I bet. That's pretty amazing. And have you been teaching 8th grade science and engineering pretty much the whole time?
Yeah, the whole time. And the engineering part is kind of an after-school elective,
Okay.
and we do robotics and we do rockets and we do things like that. And then the 8th grade science is my during the day kind of job.
That's great. That's great. Do the kids really like that extra after school stuff? You have a lot of kids
Oh yeah.
participating in that?
And my first year teaching, I actually started it as just participating in part of the local best robotics competition regionally, and that goes statewide. And the kids were so eager to do more that they just kind of talked me into adding more and more as the years progressed. And it's turned into pretty much a year-long program that we do 2 to 3 days a week after school and sometimes on the weekends.
Wow, that's a huge commitment both for the kids and for you.
Yes, absolutely. But I always figure if the kids are willing to devote the time, then I'm going to be willing to give them whatever help I can to help them, do those things. Because, being a science teacher, STEM and engineering, that's really the big push that's been coming from the college level lately. And I think my program has been around long enough now that I'm actually starting to see some of the positive effects of that. I've actually got a couple of kids going into college now as freshmen, and they're declaring engineering as a major. So we're seeing some of the positive effects of it.
That's great. So you feel like you're able to really help them develop that passion for science and technology early on, and it carries through in some cases.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And in some cases, because one of the big things that was a kind of a project at the beginning of it, because my first year I had 20 something kids, and only 2 of them were girls, and I was like, that's something I definitely got to change.
Right.
And so as the years have progressed, this last year I actually had a 50-50 split of guys and girls. So
That's great.
it was a big brouhaha, I guess. So I've always been trying to pull in girls because it's science and engineering has that stigma as a boy subject, and that's
Right.
something I've been fighting. And I got involved with Science as a Girl thing with my local university here at Texas Tech a few years back, and have been using some of the things I've learned there and incorporating it into my school programs and things like that.
So is that that's an actual program, Science is a Girl thing?
Yeah, it's something that I need a little more. I'm not sure how widespread it is, but I know they do it at Texas Tech as kind of an outreach thing,
Uh-huh.
and they tend to focus on low SES and underrepresented groups. But the camp is a 100% girls only, and they pull teachers from around the region to teach this summer camp. We do a bunch of hands-on, get the kids involved and plugged into science and loving science and that kind of stuff, and try to start swaying minds from middle school through high school and let girls know science is an everybody thing, not just
Yeah.
a boy.
That's great. That's great. What a great program. And I would imagine that there's some female teachers and participating in this as well.
Actually, I'm the only male teacher this last summer, so there were 6 of us,
Okay.
and I was one of the 6. So yeah.
Okay. Good. They have some good female role models too,
Oh,
which is good.
absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So is yours a middle school model or a junior high model, or are the 8th graders in your school kind of the king of the road at that point?
Yeah, they're a middle school model, 6 through 8,
Okay.
and 8th graders definitely feel like they're the king of the roads. So,
That's great. So, let's say you've got a classroom of kids that perhaps aren't all totally into this whole STEM thing. What kinds of things do you find really work well to motivate kids?
I always stem back to really just works great with kids with learning in general.
Mhm.
Probably the key number one thing that I do with my kids is try to relate with them on a personal level.
Right.
It's all about those relationships.
Yep.
I've always found, and I share with a lot of teachers and my mentors when I was learning, always shared with me that the real key to getting a kid to buy into anything that you have to say is getting them to understand that you care about them and having them care for you in return. And so that relationship is what I always strive for first. Once that is established, I try to connect with the fun. Science can be so fun if you plan it right, if you get to use those relationships and connect it to what the kids are genuinely interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Like with boys, it's really easy in a lot of instances to pull in pretty much any kind of sport with whatever science topic we're discussing.
Right.
If I get to know some of the kids and know that they're really into like life sciences, but not so much all the others, try to intermix and integrate some of the other topics and that kind of stuff, and then make it as hands-on as possible because it can be so easy to just go into a lecture mode and bore them to death.
Right.
But if you get them hands-on, get their hands dirty, get them feeling like, if I didn't have an apron today, life would have been miserable kind of thing. They really leave the room feeling like I had a lot of fun and I'll be darned, I learned something too.
That's great.
And a lot of the times, if I can make it so that they don't realize they're learning something while they're learning, that's when I find I get the best results out of my kids because they're motivated without even realizing they're plugged in, so to speak. It's almost trickery, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of at the same time.
Mm-hmm. What have you found to be some of their favorite hands-on projects? What do they like to get their hands dirty in?
I'll talk about 3 or 4 of them and try not
sure.
to go too in depth, but
No,
one of them
great.
just finished up. Typically at the start of the year, most science teachers, they'll start with like a basics of science kind of unit, review the scientific method, problem solving skills, how to use lab materials and stuff. So I lump all of that together in one summative lab, we call the paper rocket lab. And I've made out of PVC pipe this contraption that holds compressed air from a bicycle. And we pump the thing up to 20 psi, and the kids design paper rockets with limited resources, limited amount of time. I give them scenarios, and I'm like, I'm NASA, and I've approached this engineering firm that's you guys, and you'll have to build this rocket for us with as few materials as you can, this limited amount of time, this limited amount of fuel, and we're going to shoot them down the hall. And the entire time we're talking about variables and the things that they change and how the scientific method plays in with the experimentation that they're doing. And that's one of the good, just like hands-on, like start of the year things that gets the kids to understand, hey, if this is what the rest of the year is about, this is going to be awesome.
Great.
Towards the end of the physics topics that we hit, force and motion, speed, that kind of stuff, I culminate that with the balloon racer project and a catapult project. With the balloon racers, the kids have to go home and they use whatever materials they can find around the house and build a balloon-powered car that can travel as far as fast as possible. And then we work in small groups, and they design and build catapults that they bring to school, and we shoot tennis balls outside. And rather than going just for straight distance, we go for accuracy at a target 10 meters away. And through both of those projects, we're incorporating all the time. We're actually measuring distance. We're calculating time. We're calculating speed. We're talking about Newton's laws and how Newton's laws incorporated projectile motion.
Right.
And it's something I'm going to try new this year. When we get into the geology unit, we start talking about the crustal features of the Earth and how landforms are made. I'm going to actually have the kids create a website using Weebly or some other app.
Yep.
And they're going to create a website summarizing basically all the information they've got from the unit through all the labs that we did and any notes that they might have taken and that kind of stuff. Just try to plug them into things that they know.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, one of my my little pet peeves is where we're not teaching. There aren't enough teachers who are really teaching kids how to use kind of social media and online tools like that. Because when they go home, that's what they do in their spare time, and then they come into school and they're relatively unplugged in school, and that's what they want to learn about.
I read somewhere, and actually it's an initiative within my district. Our superintendent's calling it the 0.5 to 1 initiative. But there's a decent amount of research out right now that basically says that kids are going home and they're basically plugged into computers and software that require them to make a decision every half second to 1 second, 0.5 to 1. And when they get to school, we're actually powering them down to where they're making almost no decision in a 10, 20-minute time span. And they're used to doing it every half second to a second, depending on what they're doing at home. So, yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that study. Do you know the name of that study? I might want to look it up.
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. I'll try to email it to you.
Yeah, it's the 0.5 to 1 you said?
0.5 to 1 initiative is what we're calling it.
Okay.
And the initiative is trying to find some grant money and some bond money to try to basically incorporate technology in a different way so that the teachers have the option to do either like a flipped classroom or speed up delivery of content to spend more time on hands-on projects, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that sounds terrific. Yeah, I'd love to know whatever you can tell me about that. That's terrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You said earlier that you work hard to develop the relationships first. What kinds of things do you do that have you found to be particularly successful in connecting with kids and building those relationships?
Probably the very first thing that I do, and I be as consistent with it as possible, and it's almost embarrassingly simple. Like talking about it with other teachers, it's almost like, really, that's what you do and that works, and it does. I intentionally stop the kids at my door before they come into my room, and I shake their hand every single day. And as I shake their hand, I just take just a quick second. How are you doing? And I take a second to notice something. Nice haircut or new shirt or whatever happens to be there. And that quick just connection with that kid. There are sadly a lot of kids, either in my building or district or both rather, that might be the only time a person actually acknowledges them. And by simply acknowledging them, it does a lot to build that foundation with them right off the bat to let them know, I realize you exist. I care about you, so let's come into class and have some fun together. And then from there, I use that as an opportunity to start small conversations here and there with the kids. Hey, I noticed your shirt, and then later I'll talk to them. Is that, I noticed your shirt's got a band on it. Is that your favorite band? Tell me about them. I try to go to games on occasion, volleyball games, football games, whenever they're local especially. Just seeing the kids seeing me at the game, seeing any teacher really, just it gives them, and a lot of times it's real funny because they're all worried about social image and stuff, so they rarely even acknowledge my existence at the game. It's the next day they're like, did you see that goal I made, or did you see the point, did you see the play, whatever? And I'm like, yeah, that was awesome, give them a high five. So it's those little things that I always just try to acknowledge them, use those opportunities of acknowledgement to learn something about them, and then after you know a little bit about them, just keep it going. Keep it rolling.
That's great advice. Do you continue to meet them at the door for every period all year long, or is that kind of a first week or two thing?
It's all year long, every single day. My kids are in the routine. I've had a kid a couple of different times tell me that if I walk into your room without shaking your hand, I feel like the boogeyman's going to jump around the corner at any time. It's part of the routine. They expect it, and some of them they try to. They try to resist at first, and they're like, I don't want to. Can we do a fist bump, something like that? And I'm insistent. It's got to be a handshake. It's got to be done right. And if I ever miss a day of doing it, like I had to go run to the copy room real quick or something, the kids let me know about it, and I get grief too. But it's really cool because not only do I thrive on it, but they start to thrive on it too, and they start to miss it if it's not there.
That's terrific advice. I like that a lot. And actually, that jives with something that Dan Pink has talked about in his book, To Sell is Human. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that yet.
I haven't.
He has the ABCs, and the A is attunement. And one piece of attuning yourself to the person whom you're trying to influence or move, as he says, is one of the things you can do is a gentle touch. A touch to the shoulder, or just a pat on the back or something like that. I'm sure a handshake counts as that too, and that just puts you on the same level as the person that you're trying to develop this relationship with. He says the exact same thing. So,
you're absolutely right. Yeah, and that handshake, it's a symbol of mutual respect too. That we're not only acknowledging each other, but you're my equal at this second in time, and that's okay for us to be on equal footing for a little while. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think a lot of people will really well, a lot of teachers will learn something from that. I certainly did. So thank you.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say is your greatest joy about being a teacher?
Oh, easily it's the kids.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those, and a lot of teachers have probably heard this or even feel that this is their answer to your question, but I live for those aha moments.
Hmm.
Um, because, and it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. I'm getting them on my forearm right now. When a kid, especially someone that's struggling with something like atoms, is something that the kids struggle with all the time. It's an abstract concept. It's hard to understand something so teeny tiny, making up everything in the universe. And when I see that kid that's struggled with it, and they've come in and seen me after school, I've shown them videos, I've worked with them a little extra, and you see that moment of clarity, just that face, and
Yeah.
and that
Yeah. Oh, I lost you.
those.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
You still okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I live for that moment where you just see it. That I get it, and not only do I get it, but I get it in the way that's it's deep and it's true, and I can actually apply it.
Hmm.
And the other part of that is just those rare occasions when you get to genuinely help a kid beyond just what happens in your classroom. There have been a couple instances in the past where I've helped a kid that was really struggling with depression, got them connected with a school counselor or something else, or was able to pull a parent in and let them know, this is something that's going on you should be aware of.
Right.
And getting a phone call or an email or just a handwritten note 2 or 3 years later just saying, I was really struggling and you helped me out and I really appreciate it.
Hmm.
That actually happened for me over the summer. I got an email from a kid from last year, and she was really, really nervous about starting high school, and she was struggling from depression the year before, and I got her some help, and she wrote me just to let me know, with the help that you got me, I'm dealing with the depression, and I am still nervous about high school, but I really think I can do it now. And I encourage her, just please, keep in touch and let me know how it's going, that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
those moments are what really makes teaching worthwhile. Because, like I said before, my ultimate goal has always been to save the world, even when I was a little bitty kid.
Hmm.
And when I get that kind of impact on a child, I know I'm actually doing it. And it might be one kid at a time, but I'm making an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worth it, even if it's just one kid at a time.
Hmm.
That's great. Yeah. That's terrific. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Conversely, what are some of your frustrations about teaching?
There's always that occasional kid that, and a lot of the times it's because of outside factors that teachers have absolutely no control over, something happening at home or whatever.
Right.
But the kid refuses help. The kid refuses to be plugged in. The kid refuses his or her education.
Yeah.
And it's those times that I really struggle, and I have to remind myself that I am trying, and at some point the kid has to be willing to accept the help.
Hmm.
And I think that's key for anyone viewing this. If you're a teacher and you're trying to reach out for kids, don't take it personally if it fails. Keep trying. Never give up.
Hmm.
And if it takes all year for you to do just one thing, then it was worth it. And if it takes all year and nothing happens at all, the kid leaves your room knowing that you at least tried. Someone in their life tried.
Hmm.
And that then in and of itself can unfold to something who knows what later down the road. But that's probably the most frustrating thing. And second to that would probably be a lot of just administrative brouhaha that
Right.
again you have no control over, but sometimes the principal has a bad day and that bleeds over onto you sometimes. And
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
gets a little frustrating from time to time. But aside from that, there's really not much to complain about, as far as this job goes. It's
That's
pretty fun.
that's that's great. That's great. You do have a fun job. You get to play with things. My
Yes, absolutely. Make
my
messes.
my sister's a high school science teacher, and she loves it when she gets to go into class and blow things up. So yeah. Um, uh, what are some of the mistakes that you may have made, particularly early on, that or if you don't want to confess too much, that's fine. But I mean, what kinds of things do you wish that you had known, perhaps when you started? How would you answer some of those?
Uh, Probably, and this is something that if there's any first or second year teachers watching,
Hmm.
I would really try to impart on them that one of the mistakes I made was trying to define that line where work stopped and home began. A lot of the times work came home with me, and never make the mistake of having home come to school. Home always needs to stop at your car door.
Okay.
And work coming home, you need to, of course, there's times you got to take papers home to grade or whatever, but figure out a time when you need to stop. When I first started teaching, I was a single person, and I didn't have anyone to worry about but myself. And so it didn't matter if I went and I spent 3 or 4 hours at home working on a project for a lesson or grading papers or, whatever. But I got married, I had a kid, and it took a little while for me to find that balance. My daughter and my wife needed me. And while being a teacher is a calling and it takes 100% of every fiber in your body to dedicate and truly be a good teacher, your family needs that same dedication too. So don't make the mistake of devoting too much time to work, and make the time for your family. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes I made early on. Outside of that, my first year of teaching, and on a more lighter side, I let a couple things slip that I shouldn't have said, once or twice with a couple of kids, and that one of them being mildly inappropriate. A "that's what she said" moment popped up, and being fresh out of college, it was just part of nature. Something would come up, you just say it, and it happened in the middle of the class, and the class just froze, and they were like, "Are we allowed to laugh?" Did that just really happen? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And yeah, if something like that does happen, and you end up having just a slip, try to make light of it and apologize profusely, and let the kids know you're human, you make mistakes, and they really respect that. Because often I think they've encountered teachers in the past that feel like the teacher has to be the sage on the stage, Mr. or Miss Perfection, and what I say is law, and no matter what I say, you never ever pretend like I ever did or said anything wrong. Yeah. It's okay to stand in front of your class and say, "This is new to me. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, so let's go explore it together." They really respect that. And if you make a mistake, say a cuss word slips, say you get mad, and in hindsight you're like, "I really shouldn't have blown up about that," apologize. They're very forgiving people. Students are very forgiving, and especially if you're genuine. Kids can tell if you're genuine or not. They're probably the best at it in the world. So be yourself, and don't hesitate to apologize if you have to.
That's good advice for pretty much all your relationships in life, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Be genuine. Go ahead and admit you made a mistake and apologize. So that's good advice for everything. Now, being a librarian, I always ask my guests, what can you tell me about working with your librarian? You were telling me earlier that you've got a good one to work with right now, right?
Yeah, the librarian is you can use them as just a classic resource for like research tools and having them pull books and things like that. But librarians all over the place are getting so plugged in with technology these days that they have resources and things that you may not even be aware of. Go ask them for help and say, "I've got these projects coming up," and show them your lesson plans for the next month or 2 months or whatever. And what do you got for me? Help me out. Give me some ideas. My librarian this year has been real good with that. I came at her with about 8 weeks worth of stuff, and she was like, "We could do this here." And she helped me with the Weebly idea for my kids. She showed me that app, and we went to a training, and we learned how to use it. And she's going to help me get that plugged in when we get to that part of our lesson. Right now, she's working really hard with the reading and English departments, and the kids are going in, and they're doing more than just getting their first book checked out. They're actually learning how to use some of the web resources that the school has. And really just, I guess, my best advice with being plugged in with your librarian is start by asking, because I guarantee you they know something or have something you don't even know they know or don't even know they have. And that happened for me this year. So
okay.
Hey, go ask for help.
Okay, Jeremy, you are now my best friend. And all of my librarian friends who listen to this are going to be saying the same thing. We're going to have our own little cheering group over here. So glad to hear that. That's terrific. So we've talked about this a little bit, like you're using Weebly and stuff. Are there other kinds? That's a technology thing. Maybe there are some other tech things that you're interested in doing too. Are there any other kind of trends, the education trends, the buzzwords like 21st century learning, problem-based learning, stuff like that? Are there any of those kinds of trends that you've really latched onto that have been successful for you, or have you experimented with some of them?
Science, I think, lends itself a lot to like the problem-based learning and the
Right.
21st century skills. We have digital devices that help us with all of our measuring, like temperature and pH probes and that kind of stuff, which helps keep the kids plugged in. We have iPads we're trying to incorporate and iPods. Student response systems I use a lot. I have a smart board for the first time in my room. We're utilizing that a lot more.
Yep.
But one thing that I've latched onto and experimented with more than any other year before is social media. I've got a classroom Twitter account. And I've got a classroom Facebook page. And my kids are trying to convince me into doing an Instagram one for my classroom, but I'm toying with the idea. I always consider Instagram to be the lazy man's Facebook. But with that, I'm actually plugging in with parents a little bit more as well.
Okay.
My parents are following me. Parents are following me on Twitter and on Facebook. They're liking my page. And I'm posting assignments every day. Like, this is what we did, and here's if you have homework or not. But parents and students are actually responding to me and asking me questions through social media. And a lot of them that are asking me questions on the social media sources are afraid to ask me questions in class. It's one of those things that I think maybe that anonymity, the hiding behind the screen or whatever, gives them whatever they need to actually pull up the bravery they need to ask for that help.
Yeah.
And it's helped me plug in with kids in a way that I wasn't ever able to before Twitter or Facebook, which has been really interesting. And I caution any teacher out there that wants to go out and make a Facebook page for their class. Don't invite them to be your personal Facebook friend. Create a page and have them like your page.
Right.
That way you're not their friend, and anything that's posted or whatever is directly linked to what's going on in your classroom, and not what's going on in your personal life. So just a caution.
That's great stuff, and I'll let you continue in a minute. But I want to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on this because actually I'm trying to develop a curriculum. I'm in the process of interviewing social media experts and business people, and realizing that social media is one of the best ways for us to connect with kids for a lot of reasons, but they need to learn how to use it well. And I really love what you're saying. And in fact, my next post on Thursday is going to be a great interview with Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. So if you know anything about Pat Flynn, you might want to check that out. And I've got a couple other interviews coming up with other social media people as well. But I love the way you're talking about using a special page where you don't have to friend kids. Have you had much pushback from administrators or families or anything in terms of using social media?
Not from families. The families have actually been really enthusiastic about it. Most of the parents that I've talked to, the only, I guess, pushback I might say I've had from a parent is like a parent is hesitant to let their kid be on Facebook at all.
Yeah.
And
especially in 8th grade.
Yeah, especially in 8th grade. But through very reasonable conversations, I show them exactly what I'm planning on doing. I show them what the page looks like. And then I tell them, instead of having your kid do it, you make a Facebook page. You have all the control. You have the passwords. But let your kid access my page whenever they need to at night.
Okay.
And presenting it that way, the parents usually like, well, that makes total sense. Let's do it that way.
Yeah.
And so I've been able to overcome any parent resistance in that way. Okay. Administrator resistance, I had an administrator that was very wishy-washy about the idea, but was at least willing to let me take the risk and try. And after a full year of implementation and nothing going wrong, he's gung-ho about it now. So everything's good. So if you have an administrator that's a little wishy-washy about the idea, reference any district policy first. Make sure there's no district policy that says absolutely not allowed.
Okay.
Which I don't think there aren't many districts that just say 100% no way. But if it's an administrator just being cautious about it, have a well laid out plan and present the entire plan rather than just saying, hey, I have this idea. Because ideas are scary. Plans are easy to swallow. So just something to throw out there.
Semantics are everything, right?
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. Now, I interrupted you. You were talking about trends. You were going to talk about something after social media.
It was kind of back with the 21st century skills.
Right.
I think something that I've been through my district. They actually started as part of the .5 to 1 initiative. They had a training over the summer that I attended, and they gave each of the teachers an iPad that they could plug in and use in their classroom. And so I'm using every opportunity I can to use apps in my room.
Okay.
Apps are just a great way to condense information, let the kids see things visually that before they couldn't see visually, or manipulate something. Like I found an app with it's got basically the periodic table, and they build some atoms on it. Hey, let me see if I can find the name of it real quick. But with these apps, the kids are able to physically play with things that just would have never been able to happen before. Here's a fun one. It's called iCell. iCell lets you play with plant and animal cells and move the organelles around and explore them three-dimensionally. And then the other one's just called, well, what did I do with it? There it is. It's called Nova Elements. And Nova Elements has the periodic table, and they can explore it and play around with it and actually manipulate 3D models and build 3D models of the atoms. So that's a fun one out there, and I'm picking up more as I go.
Right.
And so when you get this up on your blog, maybe I can post a couple of things as I find them and let people know what I've found.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, getting them plugged in with anything that they can use their hands and see with their eyes is just the best way to actually get plugged in with them. And communicating.
Okay.
The way social media and the way technology has infused itself into this generation, it's just the way they think and the way they do things. I found that when I was going through college, you really had 3 types of learners. You had your audio learners, your visual learners, and your kinesthetic learners.
Right.
And then you had subgroups underneath of those. You had your gardeners, multiple intelligence, that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's been a 4th one that's popped up, your communicative learners. And that's most kids. And they're combinations of any of the 4. The kids have to see it, they have to put their hands on it, and then they have to talk about it.
Okay.
If they're not talking about it, they're not learning it. And so any teacher watching this right now, I want you to take that to heart. If you aren't letting your kids talk about content, they've forgotten it entirely the next day.
Oh, yeah, sure. What do they say? It's you learn something best when you teach it, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. I hadn't heard that there was this new type of learning called communicator or something.
Well, it's something. I've kind of just tacked that on myself. It's something I've noticed.
Okay.
I haven't read an article about it or anything, but I've noticed within the last 2 years, the more I've let my kids have opportunities to have shoulder conversations.
Yep.
I give them, just 1, 2, 3, teach each other, and then I just let them talk for 60 seconds at each other about what they learned and summarize what they did. And occasionally I'll let them use the Twitter feed. Twitter is an amazing summary tool.
Yeah. When
you have to take an entire concept and summarize it into 140 characters, you really get a clear picture to whether or not they understand it.
Do they post it to Twitter at that point, or do you post it for them?
They tag me, and I let them pull out their cell phone right then and there, and they tag my Twitter page and try to summarize what we just learned in 140 characters. So any type of communication, if they're talking to each other about it, they're internalizing it a whole lot more.
I love that Twitter thing. I think we'll have to spread that one around more, because that's actually another thing that Dan Pink talks about in terms of the C, communication, the ABCs of selling, and he has 6 different pitches, and one of them is the Twitter pitch, and that's one of the ones where you have to be able to. And I wrote about this on my blog actually when I was summarizing that, and I'm suggesting that that's one way you can have kids handle that. So it's great to see somebody actually using that. That's terrific. So
yeah,
good.
And they find it's a blast, because they're like, I've learned an awful lot, and I don't know how to condense it into one sentence. And I'm like, figure it out. Talk about it with your pals. How can you do that?
Yeah,
so
that's a great puzzle. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we'll just finish up here pretty soon. What's like the one thing that you would pass on to, particularly to new teachers, but anybody who's kind of, second guessing themselves, maybe they're struggling a little bit with some tough classes or whatever. What's like the one thing you would really pass on to people about teaching?
There's that statistic floating around all over the place that most teachers have left their profession after their, before their 5th year. So, right. Those first few years are the real critical ones.
Right.
Probably, it's hard to peg it down to just one thing, but I think the biggest problem with educators leaving within those first 5 years is lack of support. And you might be in a situation where you're not getting that support and you feel like you're floundering. The best thing you can do is ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't get it from your campus, you can get it from somewhere.
Okay.
Go check out Facebook. There's groups all over Facebook that are full of teachers willing to give ideas, willing to help with management. Get plugged in with a teacher organization. ATPE is starting up a new teacher program. They're piloting it in San Antonio right now, and I know it's going to start growing tremendously. I'm helping out with that. But yeah, get plugged in with a teacher organization. They have things in place, or they're putting things in place that can help beginning teachers. Ask a neighbor, ask a teacher friend, ask someone in another district. Someone's out there that's willing to help you. So ask for help.
Yeah.
Aside from that, I think some teachers go in with an unrealistic expectation that everything's going to be flowers, rainbows, and unicorns, and they're going to save the world the first day of school. Take a dose of reality and understand that you're moving into quite possibly one of the most noblest professions that's ever existed, and you're going to make a difference. But it's okay to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to have a bad day every once in a while. Now, every day shouldn't be a bad day, but sometimes you're going to have a bad day. And I tell a lot of the first year teachers that I try to mentor, get in touch with, that if you're coming in and every day is a great day, you're probably doing something wrong. If you're coming in and every day is a bad day, you are doing something wrong.
Right.
But if you're doing the best you can and you go home and you feel like I left everything on the table and today was a good day and maybe the next day wasn't so good, you're probably on the right track. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. Mm-hmm. And the first probably 3 years, they're tough. They really are.
Yeah.
There is no other profession that I can think of, except for maybe some military type professions, where you sacrifice more of your time, more of your energy, and more of your soul just trying to get those kids where they need to be. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you feel like you hit a brick wall, and sometimes you do. But get past those first 3 years. Mm-hmm. Muscle through it, and then keep a journal. Seriously. Write things down when you have a bad day and then revisit it later. Because sometimes when you have a bad day or you've had a bad class or you've had a bad whatever, you can either share your journal with other people and get some insight or just revisit it later with a fresh mind. That makes a world of difference. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, after your 3rd year, you can go back and look at your first year and go, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm floundering, but I have grown so much. And that sense of growth can really give you that nudge to make you feel like, okay, I'm on the right track and I'm doing the right things. And don't be afraid to ask other people about any growth that they've seen in you. Yeah. That's something that when I was a first and second and third year teacher, I was lucky enough to be in a program in my district that they helped us gauge our growth over those first several years. And some of the things they had us do is journal. And some of the things they had us do is plug in with a mentor teacher and talk on a regular basis. And they were able to help me see that, yes, you feel like you're drowning right now, but look how far you've come. And getting that perspective can make a big difference.
That's great. I like that a lot. To journal so that over time you can get some perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. Well, listen, Jeremy, this has been a terrific conversation. I think we've picked up tons of tips and ideas and useful information, and I sincerely appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your experience with all of us, and I wish you the best of luck, and congratulations again on being the Teacher of the Year this past year.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me, and I hope someone out there finds something I said very useful. So.
Oh, I'm sure there will be lots of useful tidbits. All right. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Okay. Bye.